I bypassed my mom and searched Lori's room, hoping she had left behind some useful evidence. However, there was nothing, but the landline at home suddenly rang. It was Glen's voice. "Maggie, you're finally back. Don't you want to see me?" Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Of course, I wouldn't see him, but he sent a threatening video to my mom. Lori was tied up on a railing, seemingly on a ship, and Glen was holding a knife. The blade slid down Lori's round belly, and with just one move, it could pierce through. My mom was petrified, begging me desperately to save her, and not to call the police. Before leaving, I told Hale Lush the location of Carol's diary. Only if I held off Glen would he have a chance to find the evidence. Seaside dock, cabin. I saw the devil again. Glen pinched Lori's chin with a look of amusement in his eyes, and Lori knelt on the deck, trembling like a dog, almost on the verge of collapse. It wasn't until he saw me that his expression changed, adding a touch of anger. He grabbed my hair, pushed me in front of him, and ran his big hand over my face. "You've been having fun these days, haven't you? Don't even want to go home?" I gritted my teeth. "Let Lori go." Glen suddenly sneered. "When did I say I would let her go when you came?" My expression suddenly changed, but I was grabbed by Glen and thrown into a room. In the room hung a wedding dress, snowy white with red patterns printed on it, like blood. He twisted my neck, forcing me to look at him. "Maggie, I told you, I will give you a wedding. Today, we will get married, okay?" I forced myself to stay calm, to be calm. I must outsmart him. "Just the two of us?" "Yes, just the two of us. If you want, your sister can be the bridesmaid." "I don't want to. I've hated her since I was a child." "You let her leave. I don't want to see her." Glen laughed. "You obediently put on the wedding dress, and I'll do as you wish." I gritted my teeth, picked up the wedding dress, and prepared to change. "Close your eyes first. At least there will be a little surprising feeling in a while." Glen hesitated. I said again, "Everyone on the ship belongs to you. Even if I want to run, I can't." Only then did he slowly turn around, and just then, I acted ruthlessly, took out the prepared stun baton, and shook it towards his neck. Then I covered Glen's mouth tightly and knocked him out. There were only a few people patrolling around, and I pretended to prepare for the wedding, trying to distract them. Taking advantage of their inattention, I cut the ropes on Lori's hands with a knife and ran away with her. However, we were discovered after a few steps. Several people on the deck surrounded us, and I suddenly pushed Lori into the water and jumped in myself. Both of us had learned to swim, and we were good at it. We quickly resurfaced in another part of the water. At this moment, the small boat behind us caught up. "They are over there. Go after them." I pushed Lori up with all my strength, just about to climb ashore, when a gunshot suddenly rang out in the air. The water quickly turned red, and I also fell straight into the water. "Maggie, you're really too naughty." Glen reached out and took off my clothes, putting on the wedding dress for me. The wedding dress was no longer snow white, but crimson. The red was dyed with my blood on the shoulder. I was brought back by Glen again. Lori too. The bullet just grazed my shoulder, but Glen didn't treat my wound, because he said the color of fresh blood was the most beautiful. Then he hugged me wearing the wedding dress to the deck. Behind me was the deep sea. Glen's fingers brushed my collarbone, full of greed and paranoia in his eyes. "I told you, you look best in a wedding dress. Maggie, today is our wedding day. I want to seal this day forever." After saying that, he carried me into the pile of cement. Yes, cement, rolling, freshly ground cement. Glen lifted my skirt and started to seal me from the soles of my feet with cement. "What are you going to do?" I couldn't move. My voice started to tremble. "I told you, if you don't behave, I'll turn you into a sculpture. Then you can stay with me obediently, Maggie." His voice was like a devil, assaulting me. What scared me even more was Lori, who was brought over afterward. She was tied up, and when she saw me, her whole body stiffened, and a bright red liquid flowed from her lower body. My heart sank. That child probably couldn't be saved. But Glen seemed to have not seen it, shaking his head. "So useless, she's scared, but I still prefer to torture you, Maggie, compared to her." When the fear reached its peak, I became calm. With red eyes, I asked him, "Why me? Just because I and Carol have the same face?" Glen suddenly became paranoid, ruthlessly pinching my injured shoulder. "Because you both betrayed me. She betrayed me, and so did you. She said she would be with me for a lifetime, but she fell in love with a policeman. The parents of that policeman are drug enforcement officers, who personally arrested my parents. She fell in love with my enemy." "Enemy? So you killed her?" Glen caressed my face. "She wanted to escape from me so much. She found out my secret and wanted to hand me over to the police, so I could only let her wait for me in heaven. Don't worry, Maggie. I won't make you suffer like her. I'll take it very slow, so it won't hurt too much. I can't bear to see you suffer." Glen only fixed my legs, saying that it's more fun to take it slowly. I remained calm, only hoping that Hale Lush would find the evidence quickly. But Glen seemed to see through me. "Maggie, in these few months, you've become so different. Is it because of that guy with the surname Lush? Or are you waiting for him to gather evidence? Don't bother waiting, he won't find it." After saying that, Glen clapped his hands. I saw Hale Lush, covered in scars, being brought over and tied up. With a bang, I froze on the spot. Hale Lush shook his head at me. No evidence was found. Glen laughed like a victorious hunter and slowly took out the old old diary from his bag. Are you looking for this? Carol did indeed write my secret in it, and left evidence of my torture, but soon, it won't exist anymore. He lit a lighter, and the flickering flame turned the diary into ashes. The ashes were blown into the sea. In an instant, my heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Hale Lush sneered. Glen, are you in such a hurry to destroy the evidence because Carol wrote about your illegal gun possession in it? Or maybe evidence of your illegal business and murder? So what? Glen, like a paranoid madman, sneered. Anyone who knows must die. After that, he ordered his men to throw Hale Lush into the sea. I was so shocked that I didn't react. When I realized what had happened, I was already trembling all over. Glen Storm, you madman. Glen patted my shoulder, then slowly sealed me with cement bit by bit. If you want to blame anyone, blame the fact that you and Carol have the same face. Those who betray me all have to die. And your sister can't escape either. All these secrets, and those who know, will go down with you, rest assured. The cement had reached my neck, and when there was only a last trace of air left, Glen lowered his head and kissed me fiercely. Goodbye, darling. Goodbye, Glen Storm. It should be me saying goodbye. In an instant, I pushed him away fiercely. The cement that had gradually solidified on me shattered with a bang. I swiftly made a move and flicked something towards his face. Glen reacted extremely quickly and was about to strike back. Suddenly, Hale Lush, who had been thrown into the sea, surfaced on the deck and swept his leg, knocking him down. Don't move, police! The others on the ship reacted quickly, but the alarm sounded, and dozens of undercover special police swarmed in. In less than half a minute, they captured them all. When Glen was restrained, he stared straight at me. Maggie Saxon, you set me up. Yes, I set him up. From the moment I returned to the country, I set up this trap. During those months abroad, I carefully planned, hoping to find evidence and someday find evidence against Glen. Until Hale Lush found me. They had been keeping an eye on Glen for a long time. He was involved in dirty business and had multiple deaths on his hands, but he always managed to cover his tracks, and no one could find any evidence. They were trying to get close to people related to Glen. This coincided with my plan. So, from the moment I boarded the ship, everything was just an act. I deliberately fell into the water, and Hale deliberately said that no evidence was found. Even the cement was pre-mixed with sand and special materials by the police. Harmful to the skin, but not lethal. They lay in ambush on the ship, waiting for me to coax Glen into talking and record all the evidence. After listening, Glen looked at me and Hale in disbelief. So what? I have a defense lawyer. What you just said is all baseless evidence. Do you really think that what was destroyed just now was the evidence? I sneered. The real evidence had been switched with the police long before Hale arrived, and the evidence Glen burned was just a temporary one. He was in a hurry to destroy it and didn't even check it carefully. Glen was stunned, his eyes filled with shock and despair, as if his light had been extinguished. He stared at me firmly, and for a moment, I couldn't even look at him. But so what? Murder, smuggling, multiple charges. This man would spend his life in prison. I finally breathed a sigh of relief and was about to get off the ship. Suddenly, I heard a call from behind. Maggie, wait for me. Lori walked over, supporting her stomach. Her face was pale, haggard, and distressed. I hesitated for a moment, then reached out to help her. But in that moment, she pulled out a sharp dagger from somewhere and viciously stabbed it towards me. The distance was too close, and I couldn't dodge it at all. But in the next moment, a figure fiercely protected me. It was Glen who had rushed over. Lori, like a madwoman, didn't even look, and kept stabbing and thrusting. You knew he's a murderer, yet you switched identities with me. You caused me to lose my child. My life is ruined. I'll kill you. I want to kill you. Lori, like a madwoman, stabbed so many times that no one could react in time. Only Glen, seemingly impervious to pain, grabbed the knife, turned around, and stabbed Lori in the stomach. Lori's eyes widened. With a bang, she fell into the sea. The scene was chaotic. I stared stiffly at the person in front of me, wanting to ask why, but after a long time, I couldn't find my voice. He seemed to know what I wanted to say, and with blood on his lips, he reached out his bloody hand towards me, stubborn and domineering. Maggie, I told you, only I can hurt you, no one else can. Today is our wedding day. I won't allow anyone to ruin it. But as soon as his hand touched the corner of my eye, he collapsed. His hand trembled. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but the blood flowed too quickly. The police came and called for an ambulance, but it was too late. Glen just lay there, staring at me with wide eyes, unwilling and fiery. In a moment, Glen was completely silent. I stood there stiffly, unable to say a word, until a pair of large hands covered my eyes. Hale took off his coat and wrapped it around me. It's all over. After the dust settled, it took me 2 whole months to recover. Later, I asked Hale, is that you the cop that Carol fell in love with? Hale shook his head. It's not me, but it's my best friend. He sacrificed himself in pursuit of a group of criminals. Those criminals had a close relationship with Glen. As the investigation went on, my friend closed his eyes forever. I patted his shoulder, feeling a deep respect for these lone heroes. But Hale said, Maggie, you are even braver. If Carol could fight as hard as you do, maybe there would still be a glimmer of hope. After everything was over, I went back to the Saxon family to pack my things. Lori was rescued and brought brought back, but due to the shock, she went mad and was admitted to a mental hospital. I left them some money and left without saying goodbye. Later, my mom called me countless times, saying how pitiful Lori was and how poor her mental state was. Even now, my mom only cares about Lori, but she clearly knows that on the ship, Lori almost killed me. Maybe I shouldn't have come back, shouldn't have returned to this family, but all of this is no longer my concern. The path was chosen by Lori herself, and I have to pursue my own freedom. I moved to a new city and slowly built up my own life. One rushed morning, I hurried off to work, only to find breakfast already prepared on the table when I opened my eyes. I instinctively jumped, thinking someone was in the house. But soon, I was embraced by a warm chest. "Little princess, it's me. I'm on vacation and came back to be with you." Hale kissed my forehead. I breathed a sigh of relief. Glen Storm would never come out again, and the person by my side could cherish me like a jewel and protect me for a lifetime. But perhaps as a lingering effect, every time I thought of Glen, I felt breathless, as if I might never catch my breath again.